You're listening to Shout Takes, a Shout Factory podcast. I'm Brian Ward. Well, we've lost another legend. Last Thursday, it was announced that the prolific and iconic writer Harlan Ellison had passed away at the age of 84. Now, if you're not aware of Harlan Ellison, I'm sure you are and just didn't realize it. Throughout his life, he wrote nearly 2,000 works, including novels, short stories, essays, screenplays, comic books, and teleplays, including Star Trek's City on the Edge of Forever. Well, sort of. His draft was altered dramatically by Gene Roddenberry, which brings me to the thing most people remember him for, aside from his brilliant works, his temper. Harlan was infamous for fighting every fight regardless of its worth. Sometimes this was even physical. He was known as a curmudgeon, proudly. He didn't suffer fools or, well, anyone. I had the opportunity on several occasions to meet Harlan at a mutual friend's parties. I would often sit surrounded by other legendary writers and listen to his stories. He was a fantastic storyteller and never found himself without words. I never really saw the curmudgeon, primarily because he was always surrounded at those times with allies for the most part. And although there were certainly heated conversations, I find myself believing that those were likely started by Harlan himself just to satisfy his need to argue. The following conversation between Harlan and L.Q. Jones, the co-writer and director of the film based on one of Harlan's all-time greatest works, A Boy and His Dog, is definitely one for the books. As Harlan discusses his distrust of Hollywood, the only time he suffered from writer's block, famous filmmakers who lifted from his work, and what it would have taken to get Harlan on their side if they were doing so, and what LQ got right and wrong with A Boy and His Dog. This is a long one, but it's worth every minute. Here's the late, great Harlan Ellison and LQ Jones discussing A Boy and His Dog.
Well, the reason one gives for any story ever having been written is usually not the reason it was written. It comes from a congeries of associations. If I think of a corpse, I may be thinking of an Egyptian corpse. I may be thinking of Hugo Chavez just dying a couple of days ago. But in this case, I had a dog named Abu, who was named after the thief of Baghdad, Little Abu. And he was one of the most intelligent creatures I've ever known. He looked a lot like this dog. And he and I would sit and talk. I'm not much one on ruminating or talking to myself, but when I'm talking to a dog, I'm dealing with my equals. And he and I would play chess. He was incredibly clever. He would always beat me with the schoolboy gambit. I could never get past that. Anyhow, one time we were talking. And we were talking about the old-time writer of dog books, Albert Payson Terhune. And I was saying I loved his books, which were called things like Lad, a Dog. And I thought I'd love to write a story called A Boy and His Dog and make it something after the Third World War and use the title A Boy and His Dog as kind of a, not a pun, but as a loss leader. So people would think it was a nice, quiet story. But in fact, it would be filled with all of the rigors of a desolate landscape after the war. And the dog said to me, "Sounds like a good idea. Why don't you make me the hero?" And I said to Abu, "That sounds good to me." And so I began writing A Boy and His Dog. And I called the dog Blood, and I called the boy Vic. And I made the boy Vic 13, 14 years old so that he would be just coming into puberty. And the dog would be telepathic. so the two of them could communicate. And that was the beginning of the story. So I started writing the story, and I had to go to England. And I was in England right around the time they were shooting The Return of the Jedi. And they wanted me to do the script for The Return of the Jedi at that time. And I was in a flat in London, and I'm writing A Boy and His Dog. And I was enjoying the hell out of it because it was just me having a conversation with the dog. That's all the story is. It's a real buddy movie. And while I was writing it, I finished the first section. It was going to be a whole novel. And the whole novel was going to be called Blood's a Rover, based on the old poem by, I think it's Walter de la Mare. I'm probably wrong and will look like a fool, but I think it was Walter de la Mare, and it says, "For blood's a rover that never rests." And I thought the pun, "Blood's a Rover," was funny because he's a dog, hey Rover, come here Rover. So Vic calls him Blood. And I was writing it, and I finished that section, that first novella section that is called A Boy and His Dog. And I got a call from Michael Moorcock, the novelist, the British novelist, and he was doing a magazine called New Worlds, and he needed a story, and he said, "Have you got a story?" And I said, "I just finished the first part of a novel." I said, "But I think it's self-contained." He said, "Let me take a look at it." So I sent it to him, and he bought it. And the next thing I knew, not only had he bought it, but it had won the Hugo Award. And not only had he bought it, but it had gotten widespread public appeal, and I started getting calls from film companies. Well, one of the film companies was Universal, and they offered me an enormous amount of money. It was 6 figures, which was an enormous amount of money in that time. The only thing was they said, "We want to animate the dog's mouth." And I said, "Let me hear that one more time because I think my brain has gone on a freeze. You want to animate the dog's mouth like like Mr. Ed?" And they said yes, and I said, "No, I don't think so." And theirs was the first of a half a dozen serious phone calls. These were not so much exploratory as they were serious. We love the story and we want to do it. MGM was another one. And I kept putting them off because they all wanted to either animate the voice or animate the dog's face or do something that was so incredibly cinematically silly that I, arrogant as I was, because I wasn't hurting for money, said, "I don't think so." And then one day, it's a dark and stormy night, I get a phone call. Take it.
You're too self-effacing, for Christ's sakes. Let's first understand something. God, it pains me to say this in front of you. I hate to brag on you to your face, but we're dealing with an animal, a picture, and a novella called A Boy and His Dog.
Yeah.
There are many, as a matter of fact, critics who have said of the picture and also the novella, but in this case, the picture, that it may well be the best science fiction picture ever made. Now that's BS, but it's far
It's an
better.
awfully good picture.
Right, but it's better than having them say it's the worst one ever made. But first, we got to get you on level playing ground, folks, because Harlan, and I've told you this from the first, so it's nothing new to you. From the beginning, I told you, and I'm correct, I did a lot of work. I put a lot of work into it, a lot of talent from a lot of people went into it. None of that could ever have taken place if you had not written the original story. Everything springs from that. The story is brilliant, and it's brilliant in its simplicity and the way young people work with their animals. Anyway, wanted to get that out of the way.
You are much too kind.
That's true. I should have told a lie. Nevertheless, we're working on a picture that my company made, and when I get mad enough, we make a picture. We're cleaning up a picture, and my DP, John Morrow, came in, dropped a book on my desk, and said, "You ought to read this. Really read it." I said, "You bet." And went on about business. I kind of forgot about it, I guess. And a couple of months later, our secretary came in and said, "Did you read the book that John gave you?" "No, I didn't. I'll have to get it right." He said, "Well, he's coming in tomorrow. You better read the damn thing." Okay. So I went home. With the kid. We worked till 9 or 10 o'clock that night. I got home with the family. We did family things till about midnight. They went to bed, and I went into the study and I started reading. I read the first third of it. I don't know whether I've told you this or not. And I put it down. I said, "This is a shame. This is a crying shame. Here is a fantastic beginning for a story. It is original, it is funny, it is mean, it is real. You can't hold it up. The ass has got to fall off of it, and it's a shame. It's going to be a real waste." I read the next third, and I was saying that even more. I now read the last. I laughed so hard. This is like 3 o'clock in the morning. I laughed so hard, I fell on the floor. I fell on the floor. And I said, "My God, this is it." The next morning, I laid it on Alvy's desk. Remember Alvy, my partner?
I remember Alvy
I said,
Moore.
this is what we're going to make. He didn't understand it, but he said yes. And so I said, "How do we reach Harlan Ellison? God, he's so far above us. The man's wealthy. He's famous. What do we do?" And I said, "Wait a minute, I know." And Sheila was standing there. She said, "Look, why don't you call him?" I said, you don't understand these things, Sheila. You're not bright like we are. You're the secretary. Let us take care of it. Now, I know this stockbroker who has a chauffeur that told me that he read something. I'll call him. And Albie said, no, wait a minute. I know an agent. Surely he deals in books. He'll know Harlan, the door opening with Sheila, and she says, Harlan's on the phone. Right? She didn't know a damn thing about it. There he is. I got him on the phone. So I say now my heart has stopped for a second. What do I say? And finally, I think I blurted out something like, Harlan, I want to make your story, a boy, a dog, into a picture. There was a slight pause. And suave as you are, as you always are in your business dealings, you said, so the hell does everybody else in town, and they know what they're doing, period. That was my intro to you. Take it away.
So Harlan, you are on record as having decidedly mixed experience with Hollywood. And here you are entrusting, and I want you to know what went into your entrusting your story to someone with, to be honest, far more experience as an actor than as a director. So what went into your decision to do this?
I would be interested in that answer.
Well, I wish there were some wonderful, magical, arcane story that would say I suddenly had an epiphany that this was the Cecil B. DeMille of the B pictures.
Right.
But it wasn't. But I had so much bullshit from so many studio executives, and they had offered me so much money, and you were offering me what we call in Yiddish bupkis.
If that much.
Bupkis literally translated means goat turds.
Right, that's it.
And yet there was something very ingenuous, very charming about you. And I knew who you were because I had seen many Sam Peckinpah movies, and you were one of Sam's rotating players.
Sure.
And I liked your on-screen manner. And when we talked, you gave me no bull crap. You were very flat and honest about it. You said, I've made a few films. They're low budget. They're suspense films. They're horror films. But I think I know what I'm doing and I know how to do it. And I said, well, how do you think you'll do the dog? And you said, well, we'll get a dog and we'll train him. And I said, you don't want to animate the mouth.
That was almost your first question, right?
Do you want to animate the mouth? And you said, no, I don't want to animate the mouth. And I said, okay, let's try this. And I think you gave me $100 or $200.
Was it that much?
I think it was between $100 and $200.
Oh, okay.
And I think I went out to dinner that night, and that was about it. And I never thought much of making much of the money of it, but I loved the story, and Abu loved the story. My dog loved the story, and so I figured, what the hell? Let's give him a chance. And I started writing the script. Now, most people don't know this. I let you down.
No, you didn't let me down. Shut up, Jones. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Harlan. I'll get.
In my mind, I let you down.
Okay.
Because I've never had any difficulty writing. Writing is one of the few things I do with great fluidity. It flows out of me. And I've written over 100 books, 1,700 stories, 40 movies, maybe 75 television plays. And I never had any trouble with any of them. And I got into this and I wrote the first maybe 10 or 12 pages in which occurs...
13 pages.
13 pages.
Right.
13 pages in which occurs the single meanest scene in the movie. It's pure Ellison. And then for some reason, I have no idea why, there was no trauma, nobody died, there was no great car accident, nothing happened. I froze. I just froze up. It wasn't being afraid of going forward with the story. It wasn't fear of writing. Some miasma from over the hill.
May I pick it up a second here?
Please.
Okay. You told me, once we got to where we could talk to each other and not scream, that boy was either your first or second to you most favorite. And you would love to see it done properly. Now, right at that time, I was starting a picture in, I think it was Phoenix. So I said, what'll we do? How long will it take you? And you said, it is my favorite. And I don't think I've written it in my head several times. All I got to do is put it on paper. I can do it in 2 or 3 weeks. Okay. I took off. I was in Phoenix. I shot there for about 6 or 7 weeks. I came back and I had 13 pages. That was all. Now I'm absolutely floored. I don't quite know what to do.
Yeah.
So I get on the phone and I start screaming. I did that for about 2 or 3 minutes and realized nobody's paying any attention. And we went at it and went at it and went at it. And then it finally dawned, even with my blockhead, that you had gone up. You just ran dry.
Ran dry.
Now, you said it was unfair to me. It wasn't, but the only thing it was unfair, I don't think you even noticed it. I started damn near breaking into tears about Boy. And I don't cry a whole bunch, but almost in tears. Not because I was running out of money, not because we couldn't get the thing made, but you were dying a little bit every day. You started doubting what you could do.
Yeah.
You started really getting down, and I found out I couldn't, no matter, it was completely blocked. And the best thing to do was just surge onward. Now, you also have to remember, and this is probably true in every one you wrote, certainly in the latter part, our agreement was that I was to shoot it the way you wrote it. I was not to change a comma, a period, a word. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Not one. So
You
now,
lied.
right? I'm looking. I got 13 pages. You're gone. You can't focus yet. What the hell do I do? And I figured, aha, the ultimate threat. Harlan, listen, I got a real problem. I'm running out of money. If I can't get the script, I'm going to write it. By God, that spurred you into action. Do you remember?
Yep.
I think you wrote 4 more pages, and it was terrible. You could not get it here. It wouldn't work.
Yeah, how old was I? Do you remember what year was it?
This was 1970.
70. Okay, so I'm born in 34.
You would be about you would be about 43.
No.
42?
36.
I'm sorry?
36.
36. I was 36.
Okay.
I was 36 and I'd been writing since I was 19. I mean, I'd been writing professionally since I was 19. And I had written hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories. And I was just tired. But I didn't know I was tired. I was written out for the time being. I needed what they call an interregnum. I needed a break. Because soon after A Boy and His Dog, I started writing again. And I wrote like a maniac. I wrote dozens of stories, one after another. I wrote movies, I wrote TV, I wrote all sorts of things. But at that point, I really was dry.
Oh, let me ask, I hate to butt in, but were you dry because it was A Boy and His Dog and you really, you loved the thing? Were you so close to it that you couldn't see it doing right? Or was it just you just ran totally blank?
Well, it was a combination of both.
Okay.
I mean, I loved that story. I just loved that story. It was very close and very personal to me. There's a lot of me in it. When you hear Vic talking, it's me talking in my dumb voice.
Sure.
When you hear the smart voice, it's blood and it's me.
Mm-hmm.
But I needed a rest. I'd had a lot of personal travail. I'd gone through 2 marriages at that point, one of which had been a nightmare, a 4-year nightmare.
I know.
And I hadn't had time yet to recuperate. I'd gone through it, but it was still hanging over me like a cloak. So when you threatened me with writing it yourself, I was filled with an abyssal, not abysmal, but an abyssal as in abyss, an abyssal fear as deep as the Maricot Trench.
You bet. Okay.
I thought, oh my God, this shit-kicking cowboy is going to write A Boy and His Dog. It's going to be a nightmare, and I'm going to be ashamed of it the rest of my life. Well, you went forward, and I went on about my business. And how long was it?
Till we started shooting?
Well, till you finished the script.
Oh, good God. Harlan, it took me slightly over a year to write the script. So I would have started probably mid-70. And so that I wouldn't finish it until the middle of 71.
So it's a year.
Oh, at least a year.
And I'm recuperating and becoming a human being again.
Or close, right, Lloyd?
Well, as close as as we of this species are permitted to be.
Right.
And you're off busy preparing this with Alvy Moore and Jason Robards Jr. and the rest of the crew. And do they know your real name?
Who's they? Here?
Well, the world at large.
A lot of people do. I don't know why, but they do. Yeah. No.
Well, there was
Harlan Ellison. That's what I go by.
You go by Harlan Ellison.
Right, right.
Well, I go by Justice McQueen.
Oh, well, that's a silly name.
Well, I have a son, Steve McQueen.
Right.
Well, the first time I saw
Help. Okay.
the first time I saw your son's name, I said, "Boy, he's got sources I don't even know about here. He's got Steve McQueen working crew."
Right.
And you went off and you shot. And I don't think I was there for any of it.
Want me to pick it up for a second?
Yeah, go. Did I look at the script once you finished it?
No, you would not look at the script. When I finally finished it,
Yeah.
I, of course, called and I said, look, I'll make a copy. I'll send it to you. I would like your comments on it.
Yeah.
Something you don't know. That I looked at it and looked at it. I read it 40, 50 times. And I said, I have no right to be writing this, but my pocketbook tells me I have to. I don't have any choice at the moment. So what am I trying to do? What I was trying to do was to write it as close to the book as I possibly could.
Yeah.
Because the book was perfect. I'm not going to improve on it if I can catch that. Now, what worked for you in the book sometimes will not work in a picture. So I had to dodge and weave to get that.
Well, there's a lot of dialogue in the story. So
I used almost all of your dialogue.
So it was easy to go from...
It was easier because of that.
Yeah.
So I called it and asked, you said, no, I don't want to read it. Why? And you wouldn't say, you just don't want to read it. Okay. So we got everything ready and we're now getting ready to go. And I say, Harlan, I'd like you to be in the picture. No, I prefer not to be. Okay. Will you come visit? No, I would prefer not to. Okay. So to the point you're talking about, you had never read a line of the script.
Right.
You had not watched the preparation nor the shooting. I know why. It wasn't because you were being blockheaded like you usually are. It was that your feelings were so great you did not want to be disappointed any earlier than you had to be. Okay? So you asked the question, did I ever let you read the script? No. So go ahead from there.
Well, you went and you shot it, and then you called me and you said we're going to have a screening of it. And when you had the screening, I don't remember whether I came with
You would not come.
I wouldn't come?
You would not come to the first screening. You would not come to the second
I didn't
screening.
remember that.
Again, I could hear you bleeding every time I talk with you. If you don't mind, I'll pick it up here for a second.
Please go.
Okay, so at least 3 times we had screenings because I wanted people to give me input.
Yeah.
They gave me input, but I couldn't get you to do it. And so I thought, okay, I give up. And then I called and said, Harlan, you just not many chances left because we're going to negative cut. Once we do that, we can't change it. Well, I'd rather not. Right, okay. Now, got to kind of make a sidebar here. I have heard from both you and other people, mainly from other people, if you make a deal saying, don't change the script, that's what you mean. And on one of them especially, I believe it was the Oscar. Both. Now I've got him. Notice how he's cringing? He's now in my pocket. Okay. They changed a number of things. And I heard from other people that you were in the process of throwing the director out the window.
Yeah. I was going to sue.
You were on the 7th floor, which didn't make a great deal of difference. You were going to throw his ass out anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. With that in mind, I told you that. You still haven't seen it. You haven't read about it. We're getting ready to cut negative. I get a phone call from you, Sheila. It says, it's Harlan. Oh my God, what have I done? I want to see the picture. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I said, we set it up at Technicolor, and I said, I want nobody else there. When the fight breaks out, there's just going to be Harlan and me. Okay. We set it up. You came in. You said, remember, the projection room is what? Small. It seats 20 people. You went down on the front row. I went in the back and ran the instrument. You did not move doing the picture. We got all the way to the end. We're doing the crawl, the credits. You jump up and here you come. And I said, the fight's on, by God, and I'm ready. You rushed over, reached out, grabbed hold of me and said, that's the story I wrote, and left. You remember that?
Yep.
What can I tell you, folks?
He tells the truth. What he saliently misses telling
Oh,
you.
I can't imagine that, miss anything. What?
Now, this is going to be rude. I don't mean
God,
it.
I hope so.
I
now
don't mean it to
recognize
be rude, but there's no way of escaping it. There is in you, at 85, a bit of the misogynist.
I believe that's true, yes.
A bit of the misogynist. Unlike I, who am a stone misanthrope, I despise male and female alike with equal vigor.
Evenly, right.
And I had written the story, and the basic concept is, after a debilitating war, whether it's the War of the Roses or the Revolutionary War or World War II, the three things that become most valuable are food, arms, and women. Women get killed as collateral damage. And so the male, being the simian that it is, takes women as property. So I thought, okay, I'm going to set it up. The boy, Vic, is just coming into his puberty. So he's hot and horny. Mm-hmm. The dog is able to spot females. So they have a symbiotic relationship. The dog will find females for Vic. Vic will find food and provide cover for the dog. And so a boy loves his dog, Albert Payson Terhune. Mm-hmm. And the dog, to make fun of Vic, keeps calling him Albert. Through the whole movie. And of course, Vic doesn't understand what the Albert is all about, but that's half the fun of it because the dog is half making fun of him through the whole damn thing. Well, when you made it, that itty-bitty misogynist in you crept in. And when I saw the picture, I loved the picture. I loved it from the minute I saw it. I said, this is a boy and his dog. It couldn't have been done better. It could have been done better if they had done it by Cecil B. DeMille, for Christ's sake. I said, but the misogynistic shit in it has got to go. It was not just personally offensive to me, it was dangerous because I could see what was coming. In my oracular sense, I knew that women's liberation was on the horizon, and I had already begun to get some of that. And I said, we've got to get that stuff out of there. And you had things coming out of the dog's mouth that were very misogynistic.
But we changed them because you spoke up.
Well,
we'll get to that in a minute.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, okay.
You think it's that fucking easy.
Well, not that
It wasn't
easy.
that fucking easy.
No.
I practically had to break every bone in your goddamn plastic
Plus,
body.
you had to raise the money.
I had to raise the money.
Right, okay.
But I...
Mine being smeared here, I can't understand it. Go ahead, okay.
Well, this was the first time I've had to confront you
Right.
with
And
this.
it's the truth, so it's hard to dodge. Right.
It was so bad, I cringed. But I, being naive in the business, thought that all you had to do was just throw it back up on the boards, and you could just,
Take a minute and fix
dub
it.
it.
Right.
You'll dub it. You'll get Don Johnson to dub it, or you'll get who did the voice of the dog?
Tim McIntyre.
Tim McIntyre to do the voice of Blood, and so I didn't say much about it that day. But as days followed, I began to dog you like an Irish banshee. Every hour on the hour.
The phone rang. Go ahead. Okay.
I would call. I mean, it may not have been that often, but it was often enough that I would call you and I would say, listen, you woman-hating piece of dog shit, you stinking zebra shit.
This is our friendship talking.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I said, don't you understand? Women will find this offensive. You cannot keep referring to Quilla June as a sow, as a cow.
Cal was the main one. Yeah.
Cow was the main one. I said, first of all, you're putting anthropomorphism into the mouth of the dog.
That's why it was wrong. Yeah.
The dog is smarter than you or I. Am I getting too loud? If I'm not getting too loud, then I should be getting loud because I'm screaming at you. You cannot have a dog calling a person a cow. And
Do you believe I've gone through 5 years of this to get it loose? Okay, go ahead.
for those of you who are watching this, who are not,
Both of you.
For those of you who are watching it, he said, looking directly into the camera, for who are novices, you have to understand that in the movie business, the writer is like the last leg on the caterpillar. If anybody ever talks to the writer, the old joke, there's an old joke about the girl who is a little loose. She's an extra on a movie, and they tell her who she has to go to bed with to get forward. You talk to the second AD, and then you talk to the prop man, then you talk to the grip, and then you talk to the sound guy, and you talk to the best boy, and finally, and on this, it's such a terrible movie that finally at the end she says, "Who do I have to fuck to get off this movie?" Well, for a writer, even to raise his voice to a producer and a director, don't forget LQ was the director and the producer on this. I mean, LQ was God to my mortal on this. For a writer who, first of all, isn't being paid any money, and who has stopped writing and can't write, and the thing's already written, it's already been shot, it's already been done. It's a fait accompli, as we say in Yiddish. For him to be screaming at the producer is about like some schmuck in the Senate standing up and throwing a shoe at the president. So I bust this poor fucker's chops. I mean, I just rolled him one way and another, and he was. This is a compliment, which will, the minute I say it, you'll forget it. Please. He was so kind to me. I mean, he didn't tell me, "Piss off, you little pissant." I mean, he called me pissant.
Of course.
And he called me a toad, and he called me numbnuts. I had a wife once who, when the phone...
God, I'm glad we're doing this straight.
When the phone would ring, and a voice would say, "Hi, numbnuts," which is about as close as I come to imitating him, she would hang up. And then he'd have to call back, and he said, "Is Harlan there?" And she'd say, "Just a minute." And then I would have to go in and explain to her, numbnuts is his way of saying, "Is my sweet dear Harlan there?" I said, "He comes from Pole White Trash in Texas somewhere." Where are you from originally?
Texas.
Are you from Texas? Where in Texas?
Beaumont.
Beaumont. I know Beaumont.
Or Houston. Or Dallas. Or Port Neches. I covered the area.
What'd you do for a living?
You mean before pictures?
Yeah.
I had a ranch in Nicaragua.
You had a ranch in Nicaragua?
See?
No.
Sure.
You're making that up.
No.
Well, how long were you in Nicaragua?
About 3 years.
Well, how'd you get from Nicaragua from Texas to Nicaragua?
Well, it's not very enjoyable, but I was home for the weekend. Remember Fess Parker?
Yeah, I remember Fess Parker.
Fess, who was Davy Crockett.
I got a very fondness for Fess Parker.
Nice man. He was my roommate in college. We were roommates for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And at a party, we just bumped in again, and he was up for a picture called Battle Cry. And
Oh, I remember Battle Cry. That's how you got your name.
right, so he sent me the book. I went back to Nicaragua. He sent me the book and said, you ought to be playing this part. So I just read it, said he was right.
L.Q. Jones.
Right, I whipped out to see Warner Brothers. And it's a long story from there, but that's how I got in. And before that, as I told you, I worked for public relations where LBJ was involved when he was running.
Well, I didn't know you'd ever been in Nicaragua.
Sure.
Huh.
We had a small ranch there, 25,000 acres.
What'd you do? What'd you run?
We raised cattle, had beans and rice. We had a cow herd, so we had a dairy and a cheese factory. We just kind of screwed around.
Well, you're not just the pretty face that I thought.
Yes, I am. Nothing else. Anyway, you were demoralized.
You know, the last person to marry a duck lived 300 years ago.
Right. Okay.
Okay, I thought I'd throw that in, just
Right.
an aphorism.
Go ahead on.
Well, I kept after you, and among the focus groups that you were showing this to, I think you took it out to some colleges.
Number of colleges, yeah. In two. It wasn't. You couldn't just show the picture. Remember, it's where you ran into trouble with it. You have one real picture, one real sound. So you have two elements, two units to show the picture.
Right.
We'll get to this in a minute.
Well, that's where I ran
That's where you got. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. On.
But when he would take it to, I'm talking to the camera now.
Please do.
When he would take it to a college, he would show it to these gaggle of college boys, all of whose dicks were shorter than an inchworm, and who hadn't gotten laid since Cleopatra was a pup. And when they would get to that misogynistic, anti-female shit, they would all laugh and roar and clap their hands, and the women apparently would sit on their hands or shove it in their boyfriend's ear. And when they got to the end, now the end of the story, this is very important. Now he knows this, so I don't have to.
It is the important.
This is the important thing. The boy never touches the meat. The boy is not a cannibal. The boy has been touched by this girl. Love has found this boy. It's a three-way story. It's a love triangle. The boy loves the dog, but the boy has been touched by the girl. When it becomes clear that the dog must live and the girl must go, the boy never touches the meat. Never in the book, never in the movie. And in the sequels, we make the big point of it because of what we'll subsequently will tell you here. But every time he would, and at the end, the dog says, she asked me, did I know what love was? And I said, yeah, I know what love is. A boy loves his dog. Because the dog is survival for him. When he does the ending, oh God, I go blind every time this comes up. He says, she asked me, well, she may not have had very good taste. She says, the kid says something like, she loves me, or she loved me, or she fell for me, or I fell for her, or whatever it was. And the dog, in the most callous thing this dog could possibly say, because the dog is not a mean dog. The dog is a funny dog.
He's also the only brains in the outfit.
In the only brains of the outfit. Vic is a dumbbell. Vic is an absolute dumbbell.
Like the director, it kind of rubbed off on him.
Well, it comes from the source. It comes from me. I am 50% of the times dumber than a ditch digger. And the other 50% of the time, I'm too smart for my own pants. She says, well, she may not have had very good judgment, Vic, but she sure had good taste. Yuck, 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 yuck. And they walk off into the distance with the dog dressed in the last remnants of the wedding veil. And I sat there and I just went, oh, kill me now. If you kill me now,
You'd be happy.
I'd be happy. If not happy, at least I'd be at peace. Well, I begged him. I said, I'll do anything for you. I'll write you another movie. I'll write you another movie free of charge. Free of charge.
Egg sucker.
Egg Sucker is the sequel, which I did write. I wrote a full 2-hour sequel to this.
Sure.
Which picks up from the moment they walk off that camera till the next moment. In fact, it has, let me clear my throat for a moment. You can cut that if you like. If not, you can leave it. A little cinema verite, as we call it.
Homey.
Homey.
It's homey.
It's homey. It's got Verschmilz.
I think so.
It's a man and his phlegm.
Write that down, please. Draw a line through it.
Do you know how many variations there are on A Boy and His Dog? Stories, books. People have done movies, A Boy and His Dracula.
No, I'm thinking. I'm really thinking about your question, because every time one of those happens, they write me. They also write you. I would say something in excess, certainly in excess of 50, and it may be well over 100. The variations and ripoffs.
You know, the best. This is the story you told me. I don't know when this happened. Back in the day when you and I were.
We're young, Maggie.
We were young, Maggie. You could go to the drive-in, which is where this film played a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always the second half of a bill, and they would play something like Gone with the Wind and A Boy and His Dog. One day, a grandmother decides to take her kid to see her grandchild.
This Disney picture.
To see this Disney picture, A
Right.
Boy and His Dog. Well, the woman, I think, had an infarct about the first rape. The kid didn't know shit from Shinola.
But loved it. Loved the dog.
Loved it all. The woman wrote the most outrageous letter, the most offended letter. I'm going to sue you. J. Edgar Hoover is going to come to your house. God will strike you with lightning in the ass.
You will be deported.
You will be deported. Right. Flayed first, then deported. Well, I said, I'll write you another movie. I'll write you another movie. Please take
anything, God.
Anything but God, but take out this last. You've got to take it out. No, you wouldn't take it out. You were so impressed by these dingbats, by these wingnuts that you had taken it to show, that you said, there's nothing I can do about it. I said, you got to throw it up on the boards, at least take out the 245,614 references to, let's kill this cow, let's eat this cow, let's do this cow, let's do
Which
that.
most of them took place in the putt scene in the gymnasium.
Yeah,
the ones you're talking
most of them
about.
take place in the basement. Yeah, there's fortunate. Thank God the film is free of the rest of it, because the rest of it, the dog by that time is on to her. He's on to her. He knows what she's about. She's not a very nice person at all. Quilla June is not a nice person
At all.
at all. And this is absolutely off the track. Everybody asks me why the clown makeup, and I say, if this were 1788 and everybody was wearing the ruff around their neck, the way they wore it, male and female alike wore that awful ruff, you would say, why the ruff? Well, it was the style. Cultures change. I watched television today, and I watched Judge Judy. May I burn in hell forever. Yeah, she's getting crazy as a mud fence. Let me amplify that. She's getting mad as a mud fly.
Okay.
That's like the cuter. I watched Judge Judy, and some guy will come on with his hair sticking up in the middle, like a shark.
With the colors?
With the colors. And I think, and earrings that are bigger than the hoops that somebody would wear in Dubai. And I say, what the fuck is going on here? Where did the future go? At what point did I catch up with my own time and find myself something that you would wrap parrot shit in? And I look at this stuff every day on television, and I listen to some of the stuff these people say, and I look at myself and I say, in my day, you had said something like that, 26 adults would be on you like the Marabunta army ants. They would pick you clean. And people say stuff that's just awful, and it's accepted. Road rage is the MO of the day. People hit you with a car, and then they drive off and drive you into, well, we won't go into that.
Won't go into that, right.
Well, we won't go into that part. I'll tell you something. Every day I watch the news, and I watch somebody with an AK-47 going into a junior high school and cleaning the walls.
Yeah.
And you say, what the hell is this? In my time, Bonnie and Clyde, John Dillinger, Pretty Boy Floyd, these were enemies. Now these people imitate each other, and they go on, they Twitter about it. First they'll show you their cat taking a dump on the piano, and then they'll show you, oh, look whose brain I blasted out yesterday.
Right.
So I'm happily a man of the 20th century. I'm happy that A Boy and His Dog is ahead of its time. It's been ahead of its time. You did it in what year, 71?
We actually shot Harlan in 74 and part of 75, but it's still years ahead.
It's years ahead of its time.
Yeah.
I got a letter from, if I drift back, you'll put me back where I'm supposed to be.
Please do.
Way back in 60-something, I got a letter from George Miller in Australia.
That thief.
George Miller did Road Warrior. And he didn't quite apologize. See.
Wait, in 67?
67?
Had to be 77.
77.
The first one was Mad Max, and that was like 77.
That was about
It was like 80, I think, or something like that.
Yeah,
Well, then maybe
it was right
80.
after Boy.
Maybe it was 80.
Right from the beginning.
Listen, I'm so fucking senile. I'm lucky I can put my shirt on.
You were this senile when you were 6. Go ahead.
I was so, anyhow.
Talking about George Miller.
I know what I was
Okay.
talking about. I'm old.
Not dumb.
I'm not senescent. I got a letter from George Miller. And apparently enough people had seen Road Warrior that they knew where it came from. And I don't need an apology from these people. I don't need someone to say, listen, I ripped you off. If James Cameron, when he had ripped off Demon with a Glass Hand, which everybody knows, had sent me a note saying, listen, if at the end he had thanked the people who brought him the Coca-Cola on the set, he'd said, and thanks to Harlan Ellison for writing A Boy and His Dog, I'm cool. I'm down with it. I am so condign, there is no placid. But he kept insisting that he was the king of the world, that he invented Titanic. And so I went after him and I sued him and I won. And we caught him with a smoking gun. He told Mel Torme's son, Tracy Torme, the producer, he told Tracy Torme on the set. Tracy Torme said, "Where'd you get the idea for this?" He said, "I ripped off a couple of Harlan Ellison stories." And then later he gave an interview to Starlog magazine, and it opens with, "Where did the idea come from for Demon with a Glass Hand?" Well, I ripped off an episode of Twilight Zone, actually two. But we had him. We had him cold, and I won. And so at the end of Terminator, it says the producers wish to acknowledge the works of Harlan Ellison. Bite me! Bite me! You know, lap it up with a large straw. Oddly enough, I understand James Cameron has nothing but good to say about me. Well, I would have nothing good to say about Leonardo da Vinci.
Right, of course.
If I admitted to all the things I have stolen from Da Vinci, who said, "Where I steal an idea, I leave my knife." But Gail Ann Hurt, who he was married to at the time and who he cheated on and married several other people. Gee, I love bad-mouthing people.
I like that. Go ahead.
It's good.
I feel right at home. Press on.
It's if George Miller had said, what he said was sufficient. It was sufficient.
In the letter.
In the letter.
Okay.
See, I love Terminator. I think Terminator is a dynamite movie.
Haven't seen it, so I don't.
Oh, it'll knock socks off.
Okay.
He didn't need to steal from me. He did, but he steals from everybody. On the top of this house is an adjunct that I've built called the Keep. The Keep
The one out
up above.
this side.
Up
Okay.
above. On either side are two large caryatids, paladins, if you will, two large statues. They were designed for me by Roger Dean. Roger Dean, you will best know from having done all the rock posters for Yes with those giant elephant ears. He also did, and was stolen, all the backgrounds for what's Cameron's latest?
The
Avatar?
you talking the animated thing?
No, the Avatar. 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 You look at Avatar. Last year, every year Roger Dean has a calendar. You look at last year's Roger Dean catalog. If I were to go and find a Roger Dean book, James Cameron, who doesn't need to steal from anybody, he's a bright guy, good director. James Cromwell,
Another problem.
James the First of England,
Right?
James Cameron, if at any point he had said, "I cop to it," or "Yeah, I read and I absorb," I believe absolutely firmly in artist-to-artist convection that I read a story and I say, well, what he should have done was, and then I will write to the writer and I will say, look, at the point at which she kills him, if she marries him, and the story goes on from there, you wind up in a completely different place. Do you mind if I change the beginning so they meet differently completely, so there's no recognition, and the ending is completely different? Do you mind that I leech off your story? That's what writers do. And writers are constantly writing to each other and saying, I got my idea from you, or you were my inspiration. Satisfactory to me. Absolutely satisfactory. I believe in the ownership of the author. That's why I can't stand these people on their blogs and all the people on the internet who want to steal. Well, if at any point Cameron had done that, as George Miller did, I would not be upset about it. Mm-hmm. But there have been so many, coming all the way back to the beginning, there have been so many versions of A Boy and His Dog. Only once have I had to sue. A Girl and Her Martian, it was called.
Okay.
And I had to sue over that and won. I'm a big one for keep your hand out of my pocket. I'm a big one for I'll spend the $5 million to win the $2 at City Hall.
You bet.
I'm a mean little dog. I don't let go till it thunders. So, A Boy and His Dog is so far ahead of its time, 30, 40 years, that we get approached, can we put up a Boy and His Dog poster in the back scene of a movie? No one's going to see it. Do you mind if we put it up? Go ahead. Homage is homage. Theft is theft.
I heard sideways from Miller. He was doing a television interview like this, and they asked him where he got the idea for what was the Road Warrior, and he said, "Oh, it's very simple. I took A Boy and His Dog and went commercial." That's what he said.
Harlan, as a veteran of having your works adapted for other media, it's fair to say that you didn't expect something that would be 100% faithful to the novella.
Right.
What do you think the film brought to the story, as opposed to looking at it as this got lost in translation? What do you think got added in translation, if anything? What do you think that was?
Having been in this business since '62, having dealt with intellects as deep and as meaningful as a noodle,
Or less.
or less, as arrogant, and that's the secret. Ignorance you can outwit. Arrogance you can outsmart. But ignorant arrogance, there's no way around, no way through, no way under, no way. As a veteran of all of this, I've always been unsatisfied with virtually everything of mine that's been done. Mm-hmm. I've taken my name off so many things. Cordwainer Bird as in, appears on everything from Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea to The Flying Nun. I've had to be beaten. Literally, I've had people sit on my chest to say, do not take your name off. Crazy as a Soup Sandwich, the Twilight Zone I did. It's really good. Mm-hmm. I never thought for a moment of taking my name off A Boy and His Dog. I always loved it. What I've put into that story is all there. Nothing meaningful or pivotal or heart-wrenching is missing. What you brought to it was what I thought could never be done, was turning Vic into a barely...
Be careful.
a barely workable dunce cap who's able to stay alive because of this dog.
You bet.
This dog in the movie is everything I imagined Abu to be, Blood to be, in the story as I wrote it. And more so in Bloodsucker, Eggsucker.
Eggsucker and Blood's a Rover.
And the story that preceded it, Run, Spot, Run.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
And what the hell was the name of the story that Egg Sucker follows a boy and his dog. Now, the way it goes is this. A Boy and His Dog is the whole novel. The opening section is Run, Spot, Run, which is where the screamer comes out of the scream pit and tries to kill Blood.
Right.
And tries to kill Vic.
Which again they comment on in the gymnasium. Okay.
And then comes A Boy and His Dog. Then comes Egg Sucker. All three. And the longest section, Egg Sucker, is twice as long as the movie. And I took from the movie, I just imitated, I invented Blood, but I imitated, Blood imitates Abu, but in the story, Blood is Vic's dog. So I missed nothing from that movie. That's why I love A Boy and His Dog, because it adds to what I put in.
Well, if I might, this is what one of the reasons it took me so long to write it, because what I was trying to do, and I was smart at least enough to do this, was to find out not only what you said or did with the characters, but why you said it and did it. So that when I got through, even though sometimes I changed words and setting, the reason you recognize it is because it all came from what you and I saw you meant.
Yeah.
Now, I may have been wrong in
You
some
got a
of
good
it.
ear. You got a
Well,
good
but
ear.
that's where it came from. The only thing that I can remember answering your question, and this is, the only difference is I vocalized it in the picture, which you did other ways in the novella. And that was a spot called Over the Hill.
Oh, yeah.
That's where they were going.
Yeah.
You animated it, you worked with it, but without giving it that name.
Yeah.
And I had to because I thought because of the picture,
Well, it had to.
I had to give them a destination so you'd know.
And Fellini, who was not in A Boy and His Dog originally, Fellini I used in Egg Sucker because Fellini was so good that I could not let him go.
Well, but again, you create even that when he wasn't there, you created him because I had to figure out what do I say, what do I do visually that will give me, first of all, we got to go way back, but we'll do that later, but what do I do to bring this portion of the word to you?
Yeah.
I didn't want to just ape it and say it again. That was showing how the world had changed,
Yeah.
what they did, and what separated the dog and the boy from the pack.
Yeah.
They were this, what would you, the phrase was singles that you used,
Rover Pack.
but the Rover pack, but Vic and
Solo.
Solos, thank you. Yeah. So I had to get that, wanted to get it across. It worked. With I built up Fellini.
Well, when I did Egg Sucker, it opens by the time Egg Sucker opens, Vic is supposedly dead. I say supposedly because if anybody goes looking for the book, they'll find it. But at the end of Run, Spot, Run, Vic is swallowed by a giant spider. And Blood has gone out on his own.
And guess who he's with?
And he's with a girl named Spike.
Spike.
And it opens, Spike is on the rag. Girl is having her menstrual period, and she's down behind a rock, and a voice says to her, track 330 to the left,
Right.
and fire when I say 3. 1, 2, 3. And she does and shoots a rover. Well, what's happened is that not all dogs are telepathic, not all solos are telepathic. That's why the rover packs stay together, because they're not telepathic.
Right.
And Spike has been looking for a new master. And Spike has found, Blood is looking
Has
for
found
a new
Spike.
master. And Blood has found Spike. And it then becomes a love triangle. Blood, Spike, and Vic. Because Vic is not dead. And Vic comes back and has been tracking Blood, tracks Blood, finds him, and all of a sudden, Vic's got a new master. And that's what made Eggsucker a really good story, I think.
I would like to get back to something for a moment. You had your day in court on the last line of the movie. You did not. And I want you to defend why you did what you did.
Well, I don't have to
didn't
defend
hear
it. I'll just tell you.
I want to know why you knew, why you wrote it, and then why you didn't change it. I didn't hear that in the exchange. I just heard Harlan saying why he was.
I'm saying I don't want to defend it. I don't have to, because in what I agree with what Harlan says. To me, it's in two pieces. If Harlan, I think, now if I had read it and it were different, I probably wouldn't say this, but from having read the novella and then looking at it, I would have been totally disappointed had the phrase, "a boy loves his dog," not been present.
Yeah.
That's what it tied everything up for me. But now I go in and I'm dealing in a lot of cases with people who are not particularly paying attention.
Yeah.
And so I have a slightly different audience. I'm catering in a degree. You have to understand, a lot of people, like I happen to be reading a bunch of the reviews of the picture.
It's 40 years.
But almost invariably, people are saying that the phrase is, it is an absolute instant, winner. It's a classic. But we have to wait for the audience to see it before it can be acclaimed as an instant classic. So with that in mind, I stayed so close, I thought, to what Harlan did when I finally got to the end. And he knows it. I couldn't it wasn't right for me in the picture. I worked on that, the line you speak of.
Yeah.
I wrote over, I think, 10 single-spaced, triple-column last lines for A Boy and His Dog. And I finally, for me, which does not sit well with Harlan, and I don't blame him.
It's the only caveat I have with that film.
No, the second, it was the main one. The cow was the first one.
Yeah.
Perfectly right. He's right on the ladder, but I think for the picture I was right. And you don't know how it pains me to say to Harlan, I think I was more right in the last line for the picture than you are. I think I am, but there's all sorts of space that I probably don't know what I'm talking about.
It's 40 years, and we're reaching rapprochement. We're reaching rapprochement at this very moment. The line embarrasses me, and it's caused me a lot of grief.
I know that.
But you may not be wrong. We ran this at the Cinematheque here in Hollywood about 6 months ago. And I'm standing outside the curtains, and there was a guy in front of me who was really into it and really heavy behind this film. Mm-hmm. All through the audience, everybody loves it. It's not like the Oscar. The where I couldn't sit in the theater. I had to go out and walk on Sunset Boulevard through the meat rack because I couldn't stand it. Now, 40 years later, it embarrasses me to sit and watch the end of your film career. Not my television career, but my film career. The Oscar was multi-million-dollar picture. Multi-million-dollar picture that just tanked. Not that it wasn't written so well. I didn't write it that well, or it'd have been better. I don't write bad. I'm a good writer. But it was rewritten by the director and then rewritten by the director, neither of whom could get passage on a boat from Ellis Island. And I have to live with it. And they make me sit through it and think I'm amused by it because it's a great parody. It's not supposed to be a parody. It's supposed to be a serious film. Well, that doesn't happen to me at A Boy and His Dog. At A Boy and His Dog, I sit through it and I just do it to me. It's like going to Pinocchio the first time.
Pour it over me.
Pour it over me. I love it. That line has caused me grief. Back to the Cinematheque. The guy ahead of me, up sitting in the front, in the darkness, really into it, grooving on all of it. As the story ends, everything's dead silent, and the camera fades to black, and then you hear the crackling of the fire. And only those who are really watching hear the crackling of the fire.
And listening.
And
You
listening.
have to listen. Yeah.
And the guy who's up ahead of me goes, "Oh my God." And I said, yeah, they get it. And then that's the best part. That's why I have no beef with you on any, that's why you never hear any beef from me, ever.
Never
about the
have.
movie.
Never have.
Never.
No. We curse each other a lot, but that's okay.
I have to curse you to
Right.
stay on my own.
I mean, I hate to branch out, but you touch a subject that's very dear to me. Some people, some critics have said, God, what a piece of trash. Others have said, it's the greatest science fiction picture ever made. So there's a truth somewhere in between.
Yeah.
The beginning is brilliant. I talk as a person making a picture. If you take it and break it down, and it's taught in almost every college in America, it's used for one of the show. The way you begin a picture properly, feeding the information that you need. We won't talk about that. The ending is even more brilliant than the beginning. In that, about 25% of the audience, you'll understand this, about 25% of the audience understands what happens when the girl looks at the boy.
It says,
That's the first inkling, and about 25% will catch it.
Yeah.
About 25%
That
will
look on her face is so mean.
You know, and you know he knows. The next 25% is when you hear the crackling. You must pay attention. If you don't, you won't hear it. About 25% catches it then. This is going to hurt you, but about 25% understand on the last line what has taken place. About 25% have no idea what happened.
Really?
And I love it because we didn't beat them over the head. We worked them the way we wanted.
Are you serious?
No, I'm serious, and I've watched it in front of audience as small as one person and as large as 7,000 people at one time watching it. And I talk to them when it's over, and I listen. That, oh my God, I hear it all three places and lacks on the fourth one. They don't understand what took place.
Well,
But wait a minute. When Alvy read your book, he did not understand what took place.
That they ate the girl?
Don't say that.
He had the dog.
Don't even say the dog. But he didn't understand because you wrote it properly. You worked up here. It is The Boy and His Dog is a very active picture, as the novella is an active novella.
Yeah.
In that, 1,000 people read it, and you get 1,000 different endings. Everybody puts his own twist into the words that you gave to me as I read.
Amazing.
That's what they do. So I tried to ape that, if you will, in the ending. And I'm so proud that some people don't understand what happens.
Well, I only get that when I get some nibdoc, for want of a better word,
Right.
who says to me, "The boy ate the meat," or words to that effect. And I said, "No, the boy did not eat the meat. The boy did not touch anything that's left."
If you doubt that, listen to the line. The dog says to the boy, "You haven't touched a bite."
A bite. Yeah.
And the kid says, "Well, I'm not hungry."
I'm not hungry.
Right. It's first time in his life he ever knew love.
Yeah.
So see, and a lot of people, it's called science fiction, if you will. To me, it's a love story. It's a love story between actually the three of them.
So let me ask you, you guys have incredibly just covered like all these questions you've covered naturally, organically, which is great. Unless you had something else you wanted to address, I had like maybe a question or two left.
Up to you.
There's the best story of all.
By all means.
I went into your office
Oh, God.
and I pleaded. You got to throw it, my exact words were, you got to throw it back up on the boards. You got to dub it. He was poor.
I was broke at that point.
He was broke. Broke. Blue chip stamps is what he was paying people with.
If we had them.
If we had them. If we had people. And I said, you got to throw it back on the boards. You got to do it. You got to get Tim McIntyre, take out the cow, take out the sow, take out the... there was a litany of them. You can't change the last line. Okay, I'll live with it. Where are we going to get the money, he says.
Which was roughly $1,500, as I recall, dollars.
$1,500
to make the change. 15 or 1,600. Just to change a couple of words.
Where are we going to get the money? How do we get the money? I'll get you the money.
That's you talking.
Me.
Not me, yeah.
I'll get you the money. I didn't have $1,500. I didn't have two ant legs to rub together.
Right.
I said, I'll get it. And I sat and thought about it. And I went back and I said, give me all the outtakes. Cut them up into
Film strips, yeah.
Film strips, two or three squares at a time. Give them to me. He gave me a paper bag filled with, or however he gave them to me.
As many as we had.
There weren't an awful lot. There was no outtakes. There was no...
We couldn't afford enough film for outtakes, right?
Wait, before I finish this story. His story, see, he doesn't tell you all the good stories. He doesn't tell you all the really good ones. You know the underground? You know how he did the underground? He goes out to where?
Oh, Bastrop. Bastrop. And we're out to the Army camp.
The Army camp at Bastrop, California. He makes friends with the CO.
Yeah.
Takes him out after a sufficient period of time. They become good friends. He's the famous L.Q. Jones.
Oh, yeah.
Well-known Western shoot-'em-up guy. Makes friends with the CO. gets him plastered out of his mind, completely hammered, manages to con him into letting him use the underground missile silos at Bastrop.
Well, it's right outside of there. It's Goldstone. You know what Goldstone is? It is the largest government operation that it's so powerful that they could only work past the moon. If it was to the moon, it was too close. And they were searching for, if you remember, communications.
Yeah.
And they changed it to where they were broadcasting numbers because they said everybody will understand numbers.
Yeah.
That's where, and they had just thrown out, what was that thing about the ship of the underwater, the submarine, Ice Station Zebra.
Yeah.
They had screwed it up. And go ahead, I'm sorry.
He got this guy so completely twisted that he let LQ go in after sundown with the whole film crew to shoot all the underground.
Yeah.
It cost him nothing. Did you give him a case of rye?
I'll tell you about that one of these days. But the only thing they first told us no, we couldn't. That's when I got with the colonel and we started working things out.
Yeah.
When we finally got through, they gave us 4 hours, but at least we had 4 hours.
Yeah.
And we got here with John, with Don, and we got the shots that we needed to make it look underground. Right.
Unbelievable.
Anyway, but go ahead and tell them about your story with the money you were going to raise.
I say to him, give me all the film strips you've got. Give me all the little pieces of film. He gives them to me. I go to the World Science Fiction Convention in...
Where the hell was that? Somewhere back east.
St. Louis?
Could well have been.
St. Louis, Pittsburgh, Washington, probably Washington, somewhere. Biggest at the time, 15, 16, 1,700 people. And we had to show the film using the sound on one reel, the film on the other. It kept breaking down. I worked that film. The film runs how long?
90 minutes if you run it straight through.
Straight through, 90 minutes, 91 minutes. I worked that film for 3 hours.
I think they made it, did they not? They made it the prime picture and started at like 11 o'clock at night.
At 11 o'clock at night.
And you were into 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning before they got through.
Before I finished it.
Because it kept breaking down.
Kept breaking down. I would come on and do my
Huckster
routine in between and tell stories and make funny faces and make funny sounds. And now back to the movie. And we'd go back to the movie and we'd show another 20 minutes and it would break down again and the audience would go, oh! And people were starting to faint and I'd go out in the audience and sweating face forward.
Pay attention.
And wake them up. We sat with those 1,700 people for 11 o'clock till 3 in the morning. And finally, when we were all done, I said, now we've got to finish it. We've got to take out the stuff that's got to be taken out. And the only way we're going to do it is if we sell you pieces of this piece of heritage, wonderfulness. Trust me, in the future, this is going to be one of your most prized possessions. And I sold them for $1 to $5 a piece.
You must have sold a lot because you came back with
a paper bag this full of money and dumped it on his desk and said, now
go shoot that mother.
That's the true story.
He raised something. Let us assume that to do it, we needed to go and make change. We needed $763, $1,700. He raised $1,764.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had just enough left to buy a Coke. Yeah, that was it.
That was it.
Right. And that was the year we got the Hugo.
It's the year we got the Hugo. It's the year that I won the Nebula. It's the year that everybody talked about the film. Everybody talked about the film. It was one of those little sneak in behind you when you're not looking films.
Yeah.
And everybody was talking about other films, and here's this little film. Everybody running after them saying, "A boy and his dog, a boy and his dog."
Who was, I'm terrible because I love him. Who wrote the Martian Chronicles?
Martian Ray Bradbury.
Ray Brad. Remember Ray went with us to the showing here where there were 7,000 people?
Yeah.
Where people were waiting for 4 days to get in. And they ran pictures for science fiction pictures for started Friday night and ended Monday morning. We were the prime, and they came out with a hideous review. Unbelievable, it was so bad. Ray was, I think, visiting you at the time, went ape. He started calling, threatening people. Remember that?
Yeah.
It was maybe 2 or 3 days later, he was threatening to kill people. We found out the guy who put his name on the review wasn't even there.
Wasn't even there. Had never seen the film.
Never seen it.
Wrote a terrible, terrible review, just upbraiding us left and right.
Yeah.
Every other review was glorious,
Except that one.
except that one. And Ray finally got a hold of him and threatened
I understand he did. Yeah.
him. And the guy withdrew it, and they ran another review, which was
Then it was too late that time.
too late by that time.
Ray was not a big man, physically.
Ray's about your size, a little shorter.
Well, I thought he was a little shorter.
Between you and me.
But to me, other than you, I love what Ray did. His Martian Chronicles to me is an absolute.
He was one of the dearest friends I've ever known. We sat across from each other at not Musso and Frank's, the steakhouse downtown.
yeah.
Lowry's.
Okay.
Not Lowry's.
You talking about the fog cutter?
No.
No? Okay.
Dining car, pantry.
That's the Pacific Dining Car. And we used to go there all the time because Ray didn't drive, so I had to drive. Susan doesn't drive either, my wife. So I drive. And we went there with 2 of the greatest science fiction writers who ever lived. Lee Brackett, who wrote Star Wars and all of the Raymond Chandler movies and Howard Hawks movies. And her husband, Edmund Hamilton, they called the Galaxy Spanner. He was forever blowing up galaxies. And the 2 of them would come out here and work. And they would work at Paramount, and I was working at Paramount. We'd pick up Ray, and we'd go downtown to the Pacific Dining Car, and the 4 of us would sit there and have a steak, and we did it all the time. It went on for years. And one night, Lee and Ed went to the washrooms to wash up after coming from the studio, and Ray and I were sitting there, and he said, "You know, you and I are linked umbilically." I said, "What?" He said, "We're brothers, separated by birth. They're our parents." He was so close to me, and I was so close to him, that what he did for us on that picture was staggering. Very few people know about it.
Well, the thing that got me with it, because I was around him with you when I was around him, which is only a couple of times, and I never knew him to raise his voice.
Never.
But on the phone, because he called me, I didn't call him, he called me to say, by God, I'm going to look into this. And he was livid about something.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to have to restrain him. That's the only time I ever heard him get nervous or mad or loud.
He was furious.
Yeah. What other have we missed? Anything?
I guess the last question I would have is,
If you're so goddamn good, how come you ain't rich? Is that the question? Yeah. No? Okay.
does the story of A Boy and His Dog mean something different to you now than it did 40 years ago?
To
I
me?
think, stories have a different way of seeing a story. It meant something to you once. It changes as you get older or as your experiences grow and all that. And the answer might be no, but the question
The
is...
answer to the question, does the story A Boy and His Dog, that separate section, not the whole thing, but the separate section, and the movie, which are a gestalt, they are one. They are so unified now that inseparable. Do they mean more to me or differently to me now than they did when I wrote them 40 years ago? When I wrote that story, I was a young man. I'd only been out here a few years, 3-4 years. I was living in a little treehouse on the other side of Beverly Glen on Bushshot Lane. The street barely exists anymore. It's all been washed out. The tree sat half in a eucalyptus tree and half on a cliff. And it was a heavenly little place. And I wrote some of my best work there. And Abu and I were very close. Abu's dead, long time dead. Died over here in the house we're sitting in now. Buried him right back behind where LQ is sitting right now. I wrote that story with love. I wrote it with a great sense of warmth and affection. It flowed out of me with no effort. It was one of the most effortless, sweet things I've ever done. Because I was writing it to someone I loved. The dog and I were very close. Every once in a while, your human friends pale in insignificance to the kind of bond you have with a pet, with an adjunct. I wrote a piece about him. It's a story of mine called The Death Bird. Mm-hmm. It's a little section called Abu. It's about him dying, about me putting him down and crying and saying, "You are not alone." The way I feel about the story today is it is so integral a part of my life. It's one of the foundations of my existence. A boy and his dog and I are as one. Had I never met L.Q. Jones,
You'd have been better off.
Nah, far from it. Had you never made that movie, I would not be today to the rest of the world who I am. To me, I would probably be who I am because I've done so many other things that people don't know about, or people know about and have established their iconography around. But I would not be the person I am today. There would be a huge chunk missing out of me if I'd never met you. Mm-hmm. I've never said it to your face, but I dearly love you.
Well, you have no taste, but thank you.
I have no taste. That's very true. But I've certainly got good feelings and good senses.
You bet. Let me answer that too. Are you through, Harlan?
I'm all done.
Okay. Mine's in twofold. Boy, and Harlan, I'm not even sure you know this. We haven't made any money with the damn thing, but it's the only motion
We
picture.
are the most ripped off people in the business.
Right, you think not? Barney's Dog is the only picture outside of Walt Disney's pictures that has ever successfully gone back to the marketplace twice, worldwide.
Yeah.
Only picture that's ever done that. So, this sounds weird to say, but I've done, as an actor, I've done 115 movies and something between 500 and 600 television shows. And exactly what you said, if with all of that, if just one item, A Boy and His Dog, were taken away, I'd be standing on one leg.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know what there is about it. I do know what there is about it. But I decided, okay, what I'm going to do is I'll kind of change it. I'll move this over here, and I'll cut this down, and I'll build this up. And I'm not going to change a bunch. I changed one item in the whole picture at the beginning. It was a brand new picture.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I wish I had the talent. I don't, but I wish I had the talent that picture represents. It is a marvel to the extent that, as far as I am concerned, God took a hand. It happens occasionally. The story was absolutely perfect and had to be told. It had to be told. And I was meant to do it because I shouldn't have had it. It should have been someplace else.
Yeah.
If you were bright, you'd have put it someplace else.
Yeah.
But he didn't. So it had to be. There's a finite power that's beyond us for some reason. Why it's diddling around with the motion picture or a novella, I can't say. But it is. And it's for my point. I can't speak for Harlan, but I think it's the same. I really would. I'd be standing on one leg. It just, it wouldn't work for me.
Einstein once said, God doesn't shoot craps with the universe. I am an atheist. Happy little atheist. There's not a lot of stuff I believe in. I believe in chaos theory. That there is no divine inspiration. That we all kind of run amok, bumping into each other,
Yeah.
lucky to get through each day. That we're a species that long after we're gone, the cockroaches have taken over. They will be looking through all this stuff and saying, what an odd species. What did they do these things for? And what are these movies?
What are these weird things?
It's like that movie Galaxy Quest where they're looking at old Star Treks. They're saying, historical records. There is something at work here. Some strange, arcane thing at work here. Not God, not the universe, but some demented, some strange thing that brought this peculiar man who used to work for Lyndon Johnson, whose bust
You know how to hurt people, don't you?
I didn't say Ronald Reagan.
That's okay.
I didn't say Richard
No,
Nixon.
it's too late now. Go ahead.
I didn't say Richard
No, it's
Cheney.
okay. I'm wounded. It's all right.
I didn't say Ann Coulter.
Right.
He worked for Lyndon Johnson, you know, who had a beak like a buzzard, who lived in Nicaragua, and me, who ran away from home at 13, was riding the rails at 14, for God's sakes. I'm lucky I'm alive. I should have been dead at 13. The life I've led, I led a life just like Jim Tully, the writer. I was out on the road. I was one of those kids of the Depression. Born in 34. I've made it to 78. I'm 3 months shy of 79 as we sit here.
In spite of all my efforts, you're still with us. Right.
Every effort on his part to drive me out of my Mesopotamian mind, we linked up against all odds, and he produced, out of what I produced, a film that people will be watching 50 years from now.
As long as there are pictures.
As long as there's pictures, this picture will do it. And this release is a godsend. To have this film out, preserved, is like having your foundation stone stunk, bad Freudian slip, sunk in aspic forever. Da-da-bum-ba-da-bum.
You got just a little taste of Harlan's wit and bite in that discussion with L.Q. Jones. I don't want to sugarcoat it. Harlan often crossed a line when it came to his treatment of others, but you cannot deny the volume and strength of his work. And A Boy and His Dog is a fantastic film that should certainly be seen. From those of us at Shout Factory, we're wishing the family and friends of Harlan Ellison the absolute best. Thank you for listening to Shout Takes.